During the late 19th century, many Polish immigrants fleeing oppression came to Detroit. In 1886, a group of them organized a school that was the beginning of Sweetest Heart of Mary Parish. On December 8, 1888, the Reverend Dominic Kolashinsky, former pastor and builder of neighboring St. Alberta's Church, became their pastor without Episcopal approval. Under his leadership, construction of the late Victorian Gothic Church began in July 1890. On February 18, 1894, the parish officially became part of the Diocese of Detroit. The church windows, made by the Detroit Glass Works, won prizes at the 1893 Chicago Columbian Exposition. Its organs is one of the oldest Austin organs in existence, and its 217-foot spires house 3 large bells that are named St. Mary, St. Joseph, and St. Barbara. My personal family ties to the church began in 1888, with my maternal grandmother making her first communion, and later in 1894 and 1904, the marriage of both my paternal and maternal grandparents. This is followed by my mother, father, aunts, and uncles, all attending Sweetest Heart of Mary School. Like many of the immigrants of the era, they became the workers that supplied the might and the experience at the foundries, the automobile plants, and the manufacturing plants in the area. In the community, they were the storekeepers, the grocers, the bakers, and the restaurant owners. They shopped at the local markets, and they celebrated their cultural heritage and religion. They were also among the many who answered the call to duty, joining the American Armed Forces. And in the end, they would bury their dead with honor and dignity. In 1889, the original property was purchased from the Norris family and was located in northeast Wayne County, Michigan, in an area that was known as Norris in Hamtramck Township. It was on the south side of Boulevard Street, later known as Davison, and 1/4 mile west of Mount Elliott Road, and adjacent to the already established East Bethlehem Lutheran Cemetery. In 1902, a parishioner, Joseph Sahavich, on behalf of the Cemetery Association, acquired another 7 acres to the south from Karl Mass, who was a member of the East Bethlehem Lutheran Church. In 1910, a third property on the south side of Norris Ditch Road, later known as McNichols Road, was also acquired. About 1916, the Hamtramck area around the cemetery was being annexed by the city of Detroit. Although the south plot was still being developed, there were a total of 42 burials in between 1917 and 1939. In 1938, Women of the adjacent neighborhood association on Syracuse Street began protesting the required fencing of the cemetery. A few days later, a riot broke out. The now adjacent Mound Road was developed during 1940 and 1942 to provide a bus route for Detroiters going to work at the many new defense plants along the roadway up to 14 Mile Road. Some of the burials were too close to the planned roadway and had to be relocated within the cemetery. Over the years, the part of the cemetery that was north of McNichols Road became known as the Old Section, and the portion that was south of McNichols Road became known as the New Section. You can see the deterioration of headstones caused by the elements of nature over the 123-year period over the older section of the cemetery. Several headstones even had photos attached to them, many of which also deteriorated or were defaced by vandals over many years ago. Bill Gorski, a longtime member of the association, had the fortitude to take photos during the 1980s. Some of those are no longer viewable. The difficulty of searching for burials at the cemetery became the catalyst for this project. What we initially learned is that flooding at the church destroyed many of the church records from the earlier years, and later a fire at the cemetery destroyed about another 50 years worth of burial records. In 1991, Jan Zaleski, past president of the Polish Genealogy Society, created the Cemetery Project with a simple mission statement: research, record, and publish a list of burials at the cemetery. Several groups of volunteers were gathered over the next few years and began walking the grounds, transcribing the inscriptions from the headstones, identifying the location by a count of headstones from the beginning of the row. The project stalled for a few years until 1996, when a computerized database was created to accept the handwritten transcribed data. A problem occurred while trying to enter the various methods that were previously being used to identify the locations, and so the cemetery sections were assigned new names as the North, Center, and South plots based upon their location. All of the sections in the North plot began with the letter N, all of the sections in the Center plot began with the letter C, and all the sections in the South plot began with the letter S. New mapping was also created. The computerized alpha version of the database file was prepared in 1997. 2002 new section marker signs were manufactured and donated by U.S. Equipment Company, and the posts were donated by the Polish Genealogy Society of Michigan. The remaining 70% of headstones in the north and center plots were reviewed and transcribed between 1997 and 2002, and then entered into the database. The first publication of the North and Center database was released in 2002. One binder was assigned to the Polish Genealogy Society of Michigan, and the other was assigned to Sweetest Heart of Mary Church. Between 2002 and 2003, Sweetest Heart of Mary Church made all of the burial records available to us for scanning and then entry into the database. The on-again, off-again task of renumbering the cemetery plots and section maps began in 2001, but concerns over sequentially renumbering all the lots as compared to the deed holder documents temporarily placed this task on hold. Unfortunately, once again, this project was at a standstill. In 2009, the decision was made and accepted to assign addresses to identify locations within the cemetery without having to change the lot numbers on deeds. The previously drawn plot and section maps had to be redrawn with the new addresses correlated and audited to the actual locations. In 2009, Roger Lasky joined me in this project and took on the task of transcribing and entering all the information from the headstones located in the south plot into the database. In 2010, the Seeking Michigan website caught our attention. The site has published the Michigan death certificates from 1897 to 1920. James Ty and Camilla Mazurek initially reviewed these files. Agnes Cardell began the systematic process of reviewing the thousands of death certificates in a year-by-year fashion, methodically searching for the Greenwood Cemetery designation. The task has provided us with a lot more information about many of our existing known burials and about 2,500 more names. However, most are without a location. Over the years, we recognized that there were a significant amount of unmarked lots. A small group was organized, and we began the task of probing 6,000 unmarked lots in search of headstones. The majority of headstones we identified were the small 3-inch by 15-inch sandstone markers that were engraved with the person's first initial and their surname. After a 50-year period of time, the interments in the wooden boxes below would deteriorate, shifting the ground above downward to fill the void. This evolution caused many of the larger monuments to topple over and the smaller ones to sink into the ground. A probe of 6,000 lots identified more than 1,000 strikes. A sizable group of volunteers from the Boy Scout Troop 1034, Birmingham, Michigan, the Polish Scouting Organization, and a few society members joined in the task of unearthing the multitude of potential headstones. Under the watchful eye of perhaps a Polish falcon, Society members began the process of transcribing the 888 uncovered headstones. In 2011, version 3 was published on disk containing all of the recently identified and located headstones, along with an introduction and history about the cemetery, an alpha and sectional sorting of the data, burial mapping by the years, and a conversion chart of Polish to English given names. Late in the summer of 2011, we received a request from Wayne State University seeking to join us with our cemetery research. After a few discussions, the Society received a Memorandum of Understanding from Wayne State University, identifying the scope of their involvement and resources that they could contribute to this project, subject to university approval and funding. We look forward with great anticipation to take this research to the very next level.